What can $400 get you in 2025? Well, not much, considering that we're still dealing with inflated prices. In my area, for example, this is approximately the type of PC that you can build for around $400 US. And sure, you might be able to build something way worse or way better depending on where you live. But for me, this was the best gaming PC that I could build today for $400. But can it handle modern games at 60 plus FPS at 1080p resolution? Let's start with easier games and make our way up to more demanding ones. Counter-Strike 2. This time we're gonna be testing this game on the highest settings, even though it's meant to be played on low settings at high FPS. Our PC is balanced towards the GPU and is better at handling games on higher settings. Therefore, we're gonna make the best use of our GPU and enjoy the high graphics with pretty much the same FPS as what we would have gotten on low settings. The CPU is the limiting factor in this game after all, so it feels like a waste not to use all the GPU power that we have in this PC. Anyhow, from what I can see, the game is running quite flawlessly on the highest settings at 1080p resolution. I'm not seeing any stutters or dips in FPS, and it really feels like a great gaming experience all around. On average, we achieved around 112 FPS in this deathmatch. Let's see how well our PC can handle GTA 5 Enhanced on Ultra settings. Here I basically chose the highest possible settings with ray tracing disabled, and I gotta say I'm quite impressed with the results. We are getting around 100ish FPS regardless of what is happening in the game. I think the gamers in my area are gonna like this PC a lot. Most of them play GTA 5 after all, so a PC like this is pretty much ideal for them. In terms of stability though, the gameplay was pretty much flawless in every way. The FPS never went below 80 and sometimes it even reached 120. Overall, we averaged around 100 FPS. Now let's move on to a bit more demanding games. Halo Infinite. Not as modern of a game, but it is still demanding to this day. I tried running it on high settings, but when I saw the FPS go below 60 in intensive fights, I switched to medium and it not only became a lot smoother, but I got rid of the mini stutters and the game became a lot more stable in every situation. On average, we achieved around 82 FPS. Cyberpunk 2077. This game did get released in late 2020, but it really feels like it's modern because of all the updates and whatnot. I honestly thought that it got released just a few years ago, even though I owned it for a long time. Anyhow, I went with high settings here and jumped straight into the game. No upscaling obviously, we'll be running it at native 1080p resolution. Now, I did run the built-in benchmark, which was fine and stable in every way, but when I jumped into the actual game, I noticed that some areas were way too demanding on the CPU. I even saw the FPS dip into low 40s, which is not something I wanna see when the GPU is not even being fully utilized. And sure, like we can always lower the graphics and run the game on lower settings, but I didn't have much time to mess around, so if you wanna run Cyberpunk on this exact hardware, just lower the stuff like the crowd density and whatnot, basically everything that stresses the CPU, and keep everything else on high or ultra, because we have a lot of extra GPU power and it kinda feels like a waste not to use it. In the built-in benchmark, we averaged 63 FPS. But in the actual game though, it was quite a bit lower, especially in the crowd-intensive areas. Hogwarts Legacy. Now, unlike in Cyberpunk, this game ended up being a bit less demanding on the CPU and it managed to utilize our GPU a bit better. Therefore, I went with the high preset since it made the most amount of sense. The Ultra preset was too demanding and the Medium preset wasn't utilizing the GPU to the fullest. In these cities, the FPS was hovering around low 60s, but sometimes, especially in crowd-intensive areas, the FPS did dip into high 50s, but it wasn't really noticeable to me, so I didn't pay too much attention to it. The fights were stable and the loading times were acceptable as well. In the end, we averaged around 67 FPS. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is the last game that we're gonna be testing today. This is the most demanding game that I own at the moment, and it feels like it's a lot more demanding on both the CPU and the GPU in comparison to every other game that we've tested till now. In terms of graphics though, I went with the lowest possible settings at native 1080p resolution. I did also try enabling DLSS, but it honestly felt like we were limited by both the CPU and the GPU, cause I sure as hell didn't notice the increase in FPS. Either way, the FPS kept dipping into low 40s quite frequently, especially in big fights, but it still felt like it was barely being responsive enough to still allow to enjoy the game. But if you really wanna play this game on this hardware, I would really advise you to get a bit better CPU, like an i5 or something, because we are really lacking the computing power when there are many enemies and animations happening at the same time. Overall, what can I say? Depending on your cup of tea, this kind of PC might or might not be for you. It really comes down to what kind of games you'll be playing on it. In my opinion though, I think you should get a bit better CPU regardless of what GPU you're pairing it with. Even the 12th Gen i3s will do just fine. You might be able to play modern games with FSR, DLSS or any other upscaling feature, but you can't make up for the lack of computing power. So you really need to have a good enough CPU that can consistently run any game at 60 plus FPS. Speaking of good enough CPUs, I've ordered a bunch of Ryzen 5 5500s on the Amazon Prime sale. I'll be building a bunch of systems with these CPUs because they are good enough for today's standards and they have enough headroom to deliver a bit of extra FPS if you decide to use some kind of upscaling feature. Because remember, when you enable an upscaling feature, you do get more FPS, but that also means that the CPU has to work a bit harder. You can always make up for the lack of graphical power, but you can never make up for the lack of computing power if your CPU is the limiting factor. And on that note, let's wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.